Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, December 28th, 2022. Time for another show. This, I understand, is now my common signal. Well, I mean, I've been signaling everybody for forever since I've been doing this. This is not a rerun, but in particular, a signal to John Shiflett, who follows along these days on Mastodon, helping everyone adapt to the Mastodon platform, and follows along, has very helpfully been tweeting along with the show, not only his own suggestions for what direction the show might take, but letting everybody know what direction the show has taken, and tweets out as we're reading it which articles we're on, which might be a very helpful, I don't know, that seems like a very helpful thing to me, so I appreciate it, and certainly appreciate knowing that John is listening along live. And if you're interested in picking those articles up and you just can't wait for Scott Anderson's summary that he produces each day that links to those and more, by the way. And if you're not reading the summaries, you might want to, it might be a habit you want to pick up, because every once in a while, and fairly frequently, really, Scott throws an additional link or two in there as developments warrant, or as he figures it might warrant, to round out the references or the discussion of the stories. And sometimes things have happened post-show that warrant some inclusion, even though they didn't get discussed on that day's show. So, at any rate, between that and John Shiflett and his tooting on the Mastodon, as the kids say, even when their voices crack. And a good way to keep up with how things are going on the show today, he lets you know when Greg has arrived. All of it's a nice courtesy. Thanks very much, John. And as it turns out, yesterday I noted that he waits to begin his daily coverage and to tell everybody that we're on in the morning, to waits for me to tell him what day it is, just so he's sure he's not tweeting about or tooting about a rerun. So I knew it served some purpose, besides just the old cold start and trying to get the brain running in the morning. All right. Oh, I forgot to bring the box over here of today's tea, and today's tea tasting, I don't know what the hell you would call it, but anyway, sifting my way through the very generous tea-based holiday gift that Scott had sent along. And today I braved the mushroom tea. And this should be a weird show, man. It's not one of those mushrooms. It's a turkey tail mushroom and astragalus root. Is that how you say it? Astragalus? It's almost certainly not astragalus, but anyway, I think I've heard it pronounced before, and I don't know what the hell any of it's supposed to do. I read a little bit about it, and should be interesting, and it says it reduces swelling, so I should be about 4 feet tall at the end of this show. That's fantastic. I would say that tea tastes and drinks more like coffee than anything else, and I think there's chicory in it as well, and then maybe that's what's responsible for it. There's also some maple flavoring. It's very dark, and I don't know how you would describe. I'm not one of those people that describes tastes very well, but I guess it's sort of dark and roasted feeling, tasting. And so, not too dissimilar to one of those herbal coffee substitutes that I've tried in the past, which as coffee aren't great, but perhaps if they had said they were tea, they would have been a little more easy to accept. But this is an interesting place to be. There you go. It's killing me right now. It's reducing swelling and something, but anyway, taking my it's not harming my voice. That's the real point. Anyway, very odd. And yes, Greg says Greg has some suggestions about how we can describe it. Smoky with a piquant scent from the back of the tea plantation. I guess so. It's very interesting. And I had to add a second sweetener to it too. It's not a sweet tea, that's for sure. And so I have a nice variety of things. I got a 3 ginger thing to try tomorrow, and then I'll have run all the way through everything that I haven't yet tasted. And then there's one nice package of backup tea, as he included. He said, in case everything else sucks, here's good old-fashioned, standard, straightforward English type tea. So there's a big box of Yorkshire Gold, waiting afterwards. Anyway, it sounds like I'm running a dispensary at this point, but it's not the case. It's all just regular tea, thanks to Scott. And so far so good. It's warm, it's liquid. It can't you can't go wrong with that in the morning. It's a help, and melts the iceberg that sits on the top every morning. So, all right, here's Greg. Good morning, Greg. How you doing? What are you drinking today?
We always have Yorkshire Gold and PG Tips and Lady Grey just as a backup.
Yes. But
that's always there's only one tea in Thai Fu.
That's true, and everyone loves that Thai Fu tea. I've seen some of those commercials. You can find it in the stores a lot easier now, Thai Fu. So I don't know if you wanted the international experience.
I'm an English breakfast kind of person.
Yes, okay.
I never went in for the magic mushroom teas or the herbal lemongrass, chamomile stuff.
Right.
People like it. I appreciate that. No reason to make fun of other people's taste. But
I just empty my lawnmower.
Those things are not smoky with a piquant scent from the back of the tea plantation.
No, I like it all. I like the regular stuff. I like I tried a bunch of the herbal ones. They're nice. They're soothing. It's interesting. I like any food. I like to try all the different crazy things.
Yeah, long ago
Mushroom
I wasn't,
was
much of a tea drinker, and I guess I'm still not. I prefer coffee in the morning, but back in the day, I went on a long trip to merry old England, and they didn't have coffee at the time. They had these great English breakfasts, and they served tea, and so I stocked up on English tea with milk, which is how I learned to drink it, and turned out I liked it.
Yeah, I kind of like it that way too. I don't know. I think I
drink my coffee black and my
coffee
tea with milk, not the other way around.
Not bad. A nice wide variety. I think ultimately I do prefer the coffee. For a while I had kicked the coffee and said, all right, why don't I try non-caffeinated start to the morning? And I found it wasn't that hard to do, but then I found I don't feel any different.
Well, I think caffeine's like oxygen. It's just a hobby. You can give it up anytime.
Yeah. Well, it's very difficult for some people, as a matter of fact. But
you get attached to your hobbies.
That's true. Well, anyway, I've been enjoying all the wide variety of it, and I think I like the fruit type thing for the morning. That's kind of nice too. But I do like the regular old English type tea that I've had, and everybody has their own breakfast tea. Apparently, I've discovered that there's now I guess there's always been. But I've not seen it in the stores. I found the English breakfast tea. Then I saw some Irish one. So now the Scots are in on it too. I'm waiting
Irish
for Welsh
breakfast tea. For a long time.
Yeah, it's been So I picked it up not that long ago. But the Scottish breakfast tea, I think, is the first time I've seen it. So why not? We'll try a Finnish breakfast tea. We'll see if we can get any of that.
I don't know that Twinings makes a Finnish breakfast tea.
Well, they should work on it.
Or Icelandic breakfast tea.
That's just moss.
Yeah.
So.
Now with skyr.
That's back in the fridge too.
Well, you got to have a little bit of everything. And so, of course, the nice thing about talking about all these different foods from different places is that lovely story. I don't know if you saw in the New York Times. I don't have it at my fingertips.
But small paper. I don't think
near Buffalo, there was this huge snowstorm we covered.
Yes.
Still digging out there, but it was like major. Even Buffalo can't handle that kind of snowstorm.
Yeah, they have.
And there was a South Korean touring group.
I did see about that story. Yes, let's hear.
And they got stuck in the snow, and so they knocked on the door of a local, asking for snow shovels to help dig them out.
We don't have that.
And the people there who were Buffalo.
Buffalo
aware, shall we say,
okay.
said, "You can't drive in this. This is nuts. Even we don't drive in this. Come in."
Yeah.
And so they invited the touring group in, and it turned out they were from South Korea, the touring group, and the family who invited them in and basically put them up for the night happened to like South Korean food, and so they had a lot of South Korean ingredients, including mixings for kimchi and other things. And so the Korean family who was on the tour, a Korean family on the tour, there were many people on the tour, wound up home cooking for them.
Nice.
Because they had all the ingredients and they wanted to say thank you. And so the Koreans did the cooking and the Americans did the eating. And it was really, really lovely story.
All right. I think I have a new internet startup in mind here, sort of a Grubhub crossed with Expedia. And you just import families from wherever you're interested in the cuisine, and they stay with you and cook.
Yeah,
I got it.
Mixed up with Uber, right?
Yeah, right.
So we're on the move,
They
and
drive
we
them
happen
there.
to be in this town. Let's look up and see who likes the food we know, and we'll see if we can get stuck and stay there.
All right, yeah. We're going to make this arrangement. I'll be on my way. It rarely snows in Central America. I'm in trouble if I want to get stuck there. But we could. I can have ingredients on hand if you're traveling here.
Right.
Okay.
So the two
They
parts
did in
about the
Martha's
story
Vineyard.
I really liked. First of all, of course, was the concept that the Buffalo folks had that, look, it doesn't matter how many snow shovels you have, you are
Right.
not going back out.
You don't
in this.
understand this. Yes, that was very nice of them. I don't know if they knew exactly. I guess they must have at that point known that they had like 10 people on their hands.
Yeah.
They didn't have a big house. It's nice of them.
And the second part is they actually had the ingredients. They didn't have to go out and get anything.
Yeah, that's good because we're calling around for
they're
a
not
store
going
that
out.
has kimchi in the middle of a snowstorm.
Yeah.
Seems difficult. All right. Well,
So,
ferment
that was pretty
cabbage
cool.
every day, I say. You never know.
So again, this is the week between Christmas and New Year's, otherwise known as a relatively slow politics news week,
yes.
because everybody's on vacation, and those that have been able to get out of Washington did, and those that can't get out of Washington, I'm sorry. But if you didn't want to be there and you got stuck there for some reason, work or otherwise, that's really too bad. It's nice to be able to leave when you're ready to, but things still happen, and we're still digesting a lot of what happened. And as New Year comes up and we move into 2023, of course, there's going to be a lot of retrospective, what did we learn from 2022 stories. You can't avoid those. The one that I want to start with, though, is a really interesting one, I think, from Timothy Snyder, writing on Substack. And it's called January 6th, The Facts.
Oh, now, finally.
A very concise summary of the Select Committee's final report. Useful because the thing is like 800 pages long.
Yeah, so are all the
but not
reviews.
the Timothy Snyder piece.
That's good.
It's only 750 pages long. So,
Here
now,
are
what he
select
does is he
4,000.
summarizes in 15 points what's in the darn thing.
It's a lot, but it's less than 800 pages. All right.
And he makes the point, look, you think you know what's in it. That's not really the whole concept here. You're going to learn some stuff you didn't know was in it, but having it all in one place is like super important.
Yes. Is
Okay,
this the
so
place?
he says, it's very easy when a long report is released to underplay its basic findings, a temptation to act as if something's not shocking if we've heard part of it before, as though this were a mark of political sophistication. The American tendency to normalize threats to democracy is also present in retrospect. What is described in palpable and convincing detail in the final report is indeed profoundly shocking. A planned and coordinated attempt by the President of the United States and his allies to carry out regime change in the United States of America on the basis of a big lie. So here's the brief summary of the factual part. Number one, Trump knew he was likely to lose and planned in advance to declare victory if he lost.
Okay. Yes.
I mean, that's been made clear. He
Yes,
knew
and we
he was going to
anticipated that.
lose, and this was planned. The fact that it was planned is known to us, but the American people still haven't really grokked the idea, really totally accepted and wrapped their heads around the fact that he planned on doing this. And then
Yes,
went ahead
it's
and did it.
important to remind people that this, and it was anticipated too. It wasn't a total surprise. People wargamed exactly that scenario in September, October,
Yeah, in fact,
and him too.
back in 2016, we all said, look, Trump is already saying if he loses, it was rigged. That's on purpose.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? So he's got a history of this. So number two, on 3 November
earlier.
2020, speaking of your point, Trump knew that he was very unlikely to have won the election of that day and declared victory anyway. And in the days following, where he'd lost, he continued to declare victory. Number three, over and over again. And again, these are things that are pretty much given evidence in the report. You might even say proven. Over and over again in November, December, and January, Trump publicized specific claims of electoral fraud shortly after being informed that they were false. So first
Yes,
he was
that's
told
the
they
new
were
thing.
wrong, and then he
Newish.
publicized them.
Right.
Aware that his advisors, number four, campaign officials and cabinet knew his claims of fraud to be false, Trump promoted people such as Rudy Giuliani who would lie for him in public. Again, it's a sad reminder of just how far Rudy's star has fallen. 5, in the full knowledge that he lost the election and that his claims of fraud were false, Trump made several deliberate efforts to overturn the election results and thus American democracy. And Georgia's going to have a lot more to say about that, and probably the DOJ as well. 6, in states he had lost, Trump personally pressured state officials to fraudulently and illegally alter the electoral outcome. We know this in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, but we know it for sure in Georgia, and that's the one that's going to have the biggest consequences because the call was recorded. 7, informed the Department of Justice had investigated and found no evidence of fraud. Trump nonetheless sought to use its powers via Jeffrey Clark to intimidate state officials to change electoral outcomes. Jeffrey Clark is a hitherto unknown but real villain, as it turns out, in this particular piece. Not this Timothy Snyder piece, this January 6th piece,
yes.
as a morality play. 8, knowing that he had lost the Electoral College vote, Trump oversaw an effort to create fake slates of electors. Those entirely bogus documents were then sent to the vice president, who refused them.
Yeah.
Therein was some drama. 9, though aware that it was the vice president's role only to count the electoral votes, and that's now been codified by the Congress, Trump pressured the vice president not to do so on the theory the vice president could, in effect, choose the president. Well, now he can't. Even the person who devised the plan regarding the vice president, John Eastman, knew it to be illegal, so he couldn't then, but it's just clear you can't now. Mm-hmm. Knowing by January 6th, this is number 11, that all remained was the formality of certifying the victory, that's Biden's victory, Trump encouraged supporters he knew to be armed and angry
to
halt this procedure and violently overthrow our form of government. That's sort of important.
A little bit. This is a minor part of all of that. Remember that he did say that he knew that they were armed when they were at the ellipse, and he still wanted them let into the ellipse. And then never mind that they weren't going to stop at a gun locker on the march between the ellipse and the Capitol. He wanted them on the grounds of the ellipse armed so that they could arrive at the Capitol armed.
12, Trump's call to violence was successful because enough of his supporters believed his lies and understood what he wanted them to do: prevent a peaceful transition of power. And there was the unfortunate circumstance where there were enough people who were willing to do that. 13, at a time when the Capitol was under attack, the vice president was in flight, and members of the vice president's security detail feared for their lives, Trump urged his supporters on to further violence at that time. So at a time when this was happening, and again, it doesn't mention it here. It's not in the report, and so not covered in this particular piece. But Mike Pence did a brave thing on that day by ignoring Trump. And at the same time, every day since that day, given the fact that Trump basically tried to have him hanged, and we had this scaffolding, a scaffold with a noose on it, erected, real time, large, strong enough to hold a person and do what it was built to do. My point being that Pence knows all this, knew all of this, and still defends him, and still won't go and testify to the committee, and still won't do his job. So he's a brave coward.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, he did
I don't mind doing the right thing in the moment, but that's goodness, helpful. Are you asking me to throw away my political career? And that, in a nutshell, is every Republican who is elected in the United States.
Including George Santos.
And about George Santos.
Yeah.
Number 14, after the failed coup attempt, a number of Republican legislators sought presidential pardons, thereby acknowledging their fears that they had acted illegally. They knew what they did. Mm-hmm. Right? Pence knew what happened that day. Trump knows what he did, but didn't care. The point is, Trump can't get there without the other Republicans not caring.
And he told everybody to do exactly that. Just leave it to me and them, and we'll make up enough garbage and lies that will overturn the election, and people will say it's okay.
Right. And then finally, and this is a great point, even had Trump believed that he had won the 2020 election, even if he uses the George Costanza defense.
Yes.
Right? Is it really a lie if you believe it, Jerry? Even had Trump believed that he had won the 2020 election, which he did not.
Right.
But even if he did, his coup attempt would remain a coup attempt. His crimes would remain crimes.
Okay.
And that's what the January 6th final report was attempting to establish, that last thing there. Trump did these things. They were bad. Sure, you could criticize it for leaving out a lot of stuff that maybe should have been in there, like, why was the intelligence information about that day ignored? And even more so, how come you're not going after your fellow Congress critters? As
and
if
that really does
that
seem...
that would be something that would be easy to do.
Yeah, not simple, but it does raise that point. You're like at number 14 or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're all important, but
yeah,
the primary role of that report was to establish that Trump knew about crimes that he committed, which were crimes.
Yes, they're
that
very
he
crimey.
knew about something which was a coup attempt, and don't try to paint it as anything other than that. This was not some tourists who happened to find their way into the Capitol, and they weren't armed, so what are you complaining about? Remember, those are some of the things that were said directly after by Republicans.
Yeah. And, right, so they were in on it, a lot of them, and it's extraordinarily important, and, I guess the part that can't be emphasized enough is that it doesn't matter, to bring back the old terminology that we sometimes throw around when we talk about these things, the mens rea hardly matters.
Yeah.
At this point. It doesn't matter whether he thought he was right or whether he knew what he was doing was all in service of a lie. Those things were done, and they're illegal.
The Costanza defense is for the courts. But for us, looking at this from a citizen perspective, voter perspective, political perspective, mens rea is some Latin term that you don't know what it means. Who cares?
Yeah, forget about it. Look, there were armed wackos at the Capitol, and they blocked the official ratification of the electoral count, thinking that they would be able to change the outcome of the presidency, and you can't do that. We're not supposed to allow that. So, yeah, all right, well, good boiling it down to the basics, really.
Right, so he finishes up by saying Trump's obviously personally responsible, but the techniques he used are not unique and could be perfected by others. The weaknesses he exploited are structural now that a coup attempt has been done, has been noted, has taken place. And we know a great deal about how it happened. It's important for us to ask some of the deeper questions about why it happened, not least to make sure that nothing similar takes place in the future. In posts to come, I'll be interpreting the report, returning to some of the themes I establish, such as the big lie, and go from there. And we know why it took place. In particular, it happened from Trump's point of view because he is the center of the universe and can't deal with losing. It just destroys his psyche, and that's part of his issue, with being who he is. But the why in terms of the Republicans is the same why as you pointed out about George Santos.
Yeah,
there are Republicans who are calling for him to resign, but not many, and one of them won't be Kevin McCarthy, and the reason is pretty clear. Santos represents a vote for McCarthy for Speaker. It's as simple as that. And all of life can be reduced to, yes, but will he vote for me? From a Republican mindset. That's all that matters to them is power. Nothing else.
That's true. They won't change their mind, but it might be fun to ask Kevin McCarthy, what makes you think he'll vote for you? How do you know he's not lying? And
when McCarthy loses, ask him again.
Yeah, right. There you go. You said he was going to vote for you, and he came in and he voted for himself. It's amazing.
Yeah, or even if he voted for you, you still lost. Now how do you feel?
Oh, well, then there's that. Yes, we can still hope for that.
So
that's true. You debased yourself again.
It's a bunch of questions that are lining up in terms of what to talk about. So I think that's pretty interesting.
Yes.
Other things to talk about before the break. Dan Drisner had an interesting thing talking about the why. We like to cover the why, not just how, but why.
The YMCA.
And he talks about the fact that the mainstream media is not screaming about recession.
Okay. Are we
Why
supposed to be doing that?
Why is that?
I don't know. I'm not mainstream.
Why is that? I love the way that Rachel phrases it. Rachel Maddow. In her commercials, she's always saying, why is that? Well, the why is sort of surprising. So he says, as the old aphorism goes, if your neighbor loses their job, it's a recession. If you lose your job, it's a depression. And if a financial journalist loses their job, it's the end of the economy as we know it.
That could be.
So they haven't lost their jobs. That's why they're not screaming about a U.S. recession. If it's too long, you don't want to read it, or if it's behind a paywall. The idea is simple. Conservatives would likely suggest this is an example of the mainstream media's leftward bias overwhelming their own economic gloominess. They don't want to be bearish on the economy while the Democrats control the White House, but there are two other explanations that are more compelling. The first is that's not what the data shows. And the second, which is the one I found far more interesting, is that even in media and tech, and he brings up tech because financial reporting and tech reporting are often the same beat.
Okay, yeah.
How do you cover Elon Musk without covering his money?
I don't know. And can we cover his money? There's a lot of it. Can we cover it all?
Well, there used to be. So,
right.
He's having trouble covering his money. But, the point there is that they're intertwined.
Burn.
And the story isn't just about layoffs, but about churn. In tech, for example, business insiders, Aki Ito notes earlier this month that even as there have been waves of layoffs, those laid off have found new and sometimes better jobs. That's what happened to the people at Twitter.
Good for you.
So if you get fired, but you go turn around and find a better job right away, is that a recession? And
not for you.
If it's not, you're not going to cover it that way if you're a reporter.
That's true. So what do we make of this? Now I have a Substack. It's not a recession. Okay.
Well, so, it's the economy is iffy. There's a lot of things going on. But no, it's not a recession, despite what Republicans say. And that's why the media isn't listening to them and isn't covering it the way they wanted the media to.
Well, good.
That's why.
Republicans love to campaign as this place sucks. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We have more, presumably. Other things
there's an hour and a
happened?
half more.
Right. Well, not for you.
Well, it's.
But you can have it if you want. I mean, if you got an hour and a half of
that's
stuff,
how long the show is, so
congratulations.
therefore we have to have some degree of material.
Well, right, and you only need to worry about another half hour. But if you have more,
I don't even have to worry about that.
stick
I can
around.
leave any time.
That's true too. Because you know what? This is all I got.
You know what?
Click.
That's all I got for today. Bye.
Wait, no. I guess I could call you back.
Michael
but you don't have to answer.
Strain has a tweet following up on some of the stuff we were talking about, which was the financial aspects of things. Wages have been growing much, much faster for workers earning below the median than for workers above the median.
Okay. Well,
this means wage inequality is falling.
That's good.
Actually, rather dramatically, if you look at the graph they put up there, which I just sent over to you.
Oh, I will now have to look at the graph that they did. Let's see. This button. Oh, okay. Is it in the tweet?
It's in the tweet.
Okay. Here we
the
go.
blue line
yes. Blue
is
line.
the lower half of the economy, and the orange line is the upper half of the economy by wage. And wage growth tracker is much better for the lower half.
Yes.
You want to know how the other half live? Than it is the upper half.
That's true. And of course, it's bizarre as you're describing it because the lower half is higher than the upper half, but only because their wages have grown more.
Yeah.
Grown, but not surpassed. I mean, the upper half still has
we're
more
not
money.
looking about how much you're worth, just how much you've gained.
So it's
Which
delta.
is the thing about Elon Musk. He's lost a lot of money, but he still has a lot left.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to get rid of some of that.
I forget that name, Sam, whatever his name is, the Bitcoin guy.
Yes,
I figure
right.
he did worse than Elon because even though Elon lost more money because he was worth more, The other guy lost everything.
That seems to be the case. Yeah, you know what? I forget
including
his
his
name
freedom.
Right, and I wonder what it's like. You don't hear much about jail in where was he? Barbados, Bahamas.
Well, that's where he was. He's here now.
Yeah, right. I don't know what jail's
He was
like
self-extradited.
there. I guess it's lousy, and they want it out. That jail sucks everywhere, I guess.
That it does. Anyway. So there's that. There's this movie out, Glass Onion, part of the Knives Off franchise.
Off, on, out. Yeah.
It's getting mixed reviews. I saw it and I really enjoyed it. And some people thought it was heavy-handed. I'm one of those people that saw Don't Look Up, and I hated it and thought it was incredibly heavy-handed.
That's the one I was thinking of. That's the movie that people say, heavy-handed. Why have you seen? Yeah, okay,
yeah, exactly. I was expecting something like that after reading those reviews, and actually it was not, in my view. And paid homage to movie mysteries of old. There's without giving away spoils. The way they set it up, it's a combination of Clue and 10 Little Indians and Elon Musk, and so go watch it and make up your own mind.
Right. Okay. Well, you did drop that hint the other day, and it apparently
you haven't seen it yet. So
yeah, significant. To
obviously,
do with it.
I didn't drop it heavy enough.
Right. Well, I mean, where do I have to go? Movie theater, around a bunch of people or something.
It's streaming.
Oh, okay. Well, that's easy then.
Somewhere.
Did you stream it at home? Okay.
I streamed. Yeah, we streamed it.
Well, that's easy. So
not going to a movie theater in the middle of COVID.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. But okay.
Other people do. Other people will.
They
not
do.
Me.
Right. I know. And then they go somewhere else other than where I'm going. So
and then they get sick.
Business. Right.
Hopefully not me, but you can't prevent that.
Doing my best.
And that's part of another thing that's going on. There's a whole thing about COVID and those who want it to be over and get mad at people who still wear masks. I don't get that. You want to wear a mask, fine.
Yeah, well,
you don't want to wear a mask,
2 years,
fine. I mean, that's the way it is.
Yeah, I'm doing it.
But that's all there is to it. You like the Glass Onion, fine. You don't like it, fine.
Right, fine. You think you won the Electoral College? Nah, that's not as good. Right. I'm not fine with that.
But one thing, in terms of worth, and I sent you the Wage Earner tweet, but I'll send you another tweet also with a graph, also in the Pundit Roundup this morning. Both were. And this one points out, Scott Lemieux shows how Tesla is doing, which is not so well.
Oh.
Constant MAGA rap posting and trolling when your core consumer base is educated urban liberals turns out to be not so great for your massively overvalued business. Who knew?
Yes. Well, it was a bit, more than just a bit, even more than massively overvalued. It had a crazy stock price. It was as speculated in as Bitcoin for.
Yeah, and the cars tend to, burst into flames.
Oh, well.
Yeah. Go see the movie.
Yes, no, whatever. Okay.
Go see the movie.
Oh, all right. You should do it. Not yet. Wait a while. About an hour and a half.
Wait at least till 11.
There's really no point in trying to do it now.
Otherwise, you'll just leave me here. I don't want to. Don't leave me. Pass the tea.
Tesla 112.
Pass the magic mushroom tea. We'll see what we can do here.
Tesla's shares used to be in the 400s, as I recall, way back when.
Yeah. Well, no longer. So, not everybody's wages are rising. Here's a nice piece from Heather Long in the Washington Post. America's teacher shortage will last until pay rises. In October, nearly half of public schools were still struggling to fill at least one teacher vacancy, according to a recently released Education Department survey. But schools in high-poverty neighborhoods were significantly more likely to have unfilled positions. School districts report having an especially hard time finding special ed, computer science, foreign language teachers, and bus drivers and custodial staff. This isn't new, but many signs indicate it worsened during the pandemic. Teachers experienced extreme levels of burnout from Zoom classes, safety concerns during the early days. Then came the culture wars that put teachers and staff under constant scrutiny over any conversations involving history, racism, or sexuality. Throw in the Great Resignation, a tight labor market, rapidly rising pay in other professions, and the net result has been some teachers and staff retiring early. Others have quit and gone to work in different professions, and some recent graduates have decided not to enter education at all.
Yeah.
And then throw in, oh, and by the way, why are you making my kid wear a mask?
Right.
Well, we're not. It's voluntary. Yes, but you made them feel bad by wearing a mask and they weren't. And that's your commentary on me, and I hate it, and I'm going to yell at you at the next Board of Ed meeting. I think there's a lot of that going on.
Yes.
Part of the problem, of course, is that COVID isn't over, but people want it to be, and they get really mad at you when you point out they're wrong.
Yes.
I mean, you're not saying, hey,
that.
idiot, you're wrong. You're just saying, I don't think COVID is over. Oh, well, what you're really saying is that you're saying my opinions that I haven't even told you about are wrong, and so I already hate you. So there's a lot of that going on.
Oh, well. And, the advantage of there being masks is that would have been muffled and you might not have been able to hear it. So it really is a great thing. Keep masking and hope that others will do the same. So you don't have to hear them complain as much, or at least not clearly.
So there's always a George Santos story. There's like a daily George Santos story.
It's a whole life to unravel.
Yeah, Jamie Dupre in Regular Order writes, that's his newsletter, New Republican admits lying repeatedly about his resume. 1 week to go. McCarthy's still in limbo, by the way. Congressional Democrats are having none of it. George Santos should resign as congressman-elect, said Representative Joaquin Castro. Just about every aspect of his life appears to be a lie. Representative-elect Dan Goldman from New York, himself an attorney, said Santos has now admitted he's a total fraud.
Yeah, so?
Santos made one very clear declaration, I'm not a criminal. Ruben Gallego said, I don't believe that either.
I think you may be lying. No, that's actually, that's part of it. He does say, I'm not a criminal, and Brazil says you are.
Yeah, and by the way, let's see your birth certificate and see where you were born.
Yeah, why not? I think
because, if you're born in Brazil, can you be a congressman?
Yeah, sure, but I don't know. I don't know. If you're lying a lot, maybe no, or maybe yes, or maybe you should be speaker. I'm not sure.
I don't know. So the funniest thing Jamie Dupre points out about this whole thing is Santos had a media offensive on Monday. It's like a charm offensive. Sometimes you try to be charming, and in fact, all you are is offensive.
He's a media. So he's trying to.
So he had a media offensive on Monday. He went on a radio show where he was being asked questions by Anthony Weiner.
Yes, I did hear, or we read a little bit about this. I didn't really appreciate in the moment exactly how bizarre that really is.
Right. So that's pretty bizarre.
Yeah.
So that segues into Jamie Dupre's other observation about not Eugene McCarthy, the other McCarthy, Kevin McCarthy. Not Joe McCarthy, but Kevin McCarthy. 1 week from the start of the new Congress, it's still anyone's guess as to whether GOP leader Kevin McCarthy will actually be the next Speaker of the House.
All right.
It's like a week. Congress
Anyone's
starts
guess?
next week, and we still don't know?
Yes.
That's pretty
paper
amazing.
due, you really have to study up.
Right. And McCarthy should know that he's got issues. It's not like he was blindsided, said Representative Mac Rosendale.
Mac Rosendale, who's that?
He's from Montana.
Really? All right, Mac.
So
whatever.
Jamie Dupre says, well, what do conservatives want from McCarthy? Most of it is the familiar struggle for power between rank and file and House leadership, but it also centers around government spending. The Freedom Caucus wants more open rules on the House floor. The idea is to let any member offer an amendment at any time. Yeah. David, could you please comment on that? That just doesn't sound like a good idea if you actually want to get stuff done.
Oh, well, no. If you want to finish bills, it's not a great idea. And it also opens you up. Well, they'll find very quickly that while it may open it up for Freedom Caucus members to do crazy stunt things that they really like, it also opens up the floor for Democrats to do crazy stunt things if they get the gumption up to do it and force bad votes that Republicans will really hate taking. And then they'll basically come back and say, we want open rules for Republicans and closed rules for Democrats. And can't we engineer that?
Yeah,
and if they can't, then they'll close the rules again. Yeah.
So the next thing, of course, is something we talked about on the show a long time ago. That is to say, we identified it right away as being an issue and explained why. Conservatives want to restore a House rule which hasn't been used since 1910 to vacate the chair, which forces a vote to boot out a speaker. And they say it's a form of accountability. They basically want to be able to offer that anytime they want. Current rules say it's got to be offered by leadership. Again, I need your expert commentary on this.
Well, we have been over this one. And by the way, I mean, I think really if you have a majority of the House behind you, and if it's a motion to vacate the chair and a Republican is sitting in it, you might actually get Democratic support on it. You can offer that motion. The rules say that they can then turn to you and say, no, the rules say that this is out of order at this time. And then you can say, well, I appeal the ruling of the chair and I have 218 people who agree with me. And then the rules don't matter all of a sudden. So you could always try that, but they're not organizing that far in advance. They just want to be able to force McCarthy with the threat, you need to put this on the floor or have an open rule on this bill or that bill, or else we'll kick you out of the chair and replace you as speaker. And if it's up to the speaker whether or not they want that rule on the books, they're usually going to say no.
So the name of Jamie Dupre's Substack newsletter,
yes,
is Regular Order.
It is.
Regular Order is something I'm familiar with because John McCain used to demand it all the time. And I believe, correct me if when I'm wrong, that what he meant was he wanted stuff to go through committee for debate when he said it.
All right. Yeah. Typically I mean, it could be anything, but whatever the normal way of doing things, I'm just a bill, only a bill. He wants things to work that way.
Right. So Regular Order, writes Jamie Dupre, as a point about Kevin McCarthy and what the conservatives want.
Yes.
Regular Order, other demands center on what we saw last week in Congress. No more omnibus bills. No votes without time to review a bill.
That's not irregular.
Let
really.
committees do their work to involve the rank and file, not just leaders.
Okay.
So it's one thing to go through committee, and it's another thing to allow debate in committees, I guess. So, what McCain was really trying to say, and I think he was talking about, the Affordable Care Act, is he didn't want presented bills given to the committee to vote on.
Okay, yes.
He wanted input into writing the damn bill.
Sure, that's why you want to be on a certain committee. You want to have a hand in writing legislation in that issue area, and sometimes you don't get the opportunity.
That's what he meant when he said regular order. I'm not so sure that these other MOOCs mean the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think what these other MOOCs mean is I don't want the chair telling me we have to do something for the good of the country or the good of the party. I want to do what I want to do.
Okay. Yeah,
I think that's what they mean.
That's probably it. Regular order meaning, I don't know. Somebody said it was a good thing.
You got to let us have some input here because you leader people are, too wishy-washy.
Yeah, that's not actually regular order for the most part. I mean,
no, but that's what they mean
open rules all the time. But yeah, it would be interesting to see if they can push through something with open rules, because you will find that in 6 months to a year, they'll be back saying we want to modify this stuff. The Democrats are forcing us to take too many embarrassing votes. You got to start closing these bills down. And I mean, look for that. What they'll essentially come back for is whenever I, as a Republican, want to offer an amendment, you got to let me. Whenever they, as Democrats, want to offer amendments, you got to stop them.
You have to arrest them.
Give me a rule that says that.
Because they're a bunch of traitors and we shouldn't let them speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's the problem with this? So, Regular Order by Jamie Dupre finishes this section with this observation, and it's similar to the observation that was made about the January 6th report.
Yes.
When you see something and you hear it said over and over and over, don't forget that what you're seeing is pretty darn unusual.
It is.
Right? Don't let it be routine because, it's now, okay, I knew about that, I heard about that. So he says about the rules package, when the Democrats were in charge, and again, I'll need expert commentary on this when they say rules and rules package. When Democrats were in charge, they unveiled the rules changes on January 1st in both 2019 and 2021. Meanwhile, the GOP rules changes are on hold because they don't even know who their speaker is.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jamie Dupre says, let me keep repeating myself. He's been an observer of Congress for a very long time. This is extraordinarily unusual.
It is.
Usually you have the rules stuff ready to go. They don't.
Yeah.
Usually you know who the speaker is. They don't. Both
Right.
extraordinarily unusual and well worth repeating.
Okay. So you should go ahead and repeat.
What's he mean when he says the rules package is ready, and what's the significance of that?
Well, this is interesting, and it's a bit ironic too. You know, like for instance, one of the things that Republicans, these Republican Freedom Caucus and others, demanding when they say no omnibus bills, which is, you know, it's an overbroad characterization of. But anyway, they're saying, well, we don't like voting on things that we haven't had time to read through and consider, right? What's happening now, of course, so they say we want rules. We want rules in the House that prohibit this from happening. And the difficulty that they're having is that they haven't been able to agree on and therefore bring forward the package of rules. So they're going to vote on a package of rules sight unseen, more or less, and hope that it has in there a rule against voting on things sight unseen going forward. So that's pretty unusual, for one thing. But usually, yeah, I mean, January 3rd is the day that they'll swear in the whole House, since it renews itself every 2 years, and organize and elect their speaker, and then adopt the standing rules of the House of Representatives. And ordinarily, they lay out, here's what we're going to be putting forward as our rules package. And they sometimes even have alternative rules packages. When Democrats are in the majority, they very often will bring forward a Democratic official rules package, and then sometimes also a package of rules slightly modified, offered up sometimes by the Congressional Black Caucus, sometimes by the Progressive Caucus, et cetera, et cetera. And Republicans sometimes offer a semi-serious alternative just to have it out there. But it's something, you're supposed to put out there a couple of days ahead of time to make sure that all the different things that people have been demanding are either in there or not. And you can make up your mind how to vote, or more likely not how to vote. It's kind of a party line thing. But how to explain yourself when you're done voting, when your local hometown paper asks, well, you voted for the rules package, but it didn't have that change you wanted. Why did you vote yes? But now they're going to have no idea. And ordinarily, that's something that's nailed down because you know who the leadership is going to be. They can craft the package for you, and that's their first act as putative leaders. These are what the rules are going to be. We decided the controversies that you people brought up in this fashion, and this is the outcome. What do you think? And now we don't know. Because we don't even know who's supposed to write the package.
Right. So, again, for longtime listeners of the show, David and I don't go over what we're going to talk about in advance. I just ask these questions and he knows the answers. It's really a very simple way of doing the show. And you can do it. It works for me.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, I guess I'll add this. Ordinarily, the rules package, it seems like an extraordinary undertaking, but it's usually, they just say, whatever the rules were last time, plus these changes. So, they can do things that way too. They don't have to start from scratch.
Right. Speaking of once and future rules, Jamie Dupre has another observation about what's going on here. And it's about earmarks.
All right.
And he's going through the omnibus funding bill, and there's a bunch of earmarks.
Well, all right.
And he said, Jamie did, I was again struck by how many Republicans got goodies for their districts but voted no anyway. It's just like the GOP lawmakers voting against infrastructure, then going and telling their representatives or telling their constituents, just how much we did for you.
It's the exact same thing. I don't know why it's a direct comparison.
It's a direct comparison in terms of they vote no but hope yes, or they vote no but claim the benefits of what the Democrats did because the Democrats are doing the heavy lifting.
Yes. Right. And so, Republicans have gone back and forth on whether or not they want earmarks or want things to be allowed, but they benefit from them even when they're out of power. And I suppose, it'll be really interesting to see whether they allow Democrats to use them when they're in the minority, or whether they just say, I don't know why Democrats gave us anything, but they did, suckers. We don't intend to give them anything. And we'll see how long that lasts.
So he gives two examples. So two of the largest earmarks in the entire omnibus, worth $238 million, went to a pair of Army Corps of Engineers projects in Randy Weber's district in Texas, a Republican, who then trumpeted his opposition. I just voted no on the bill that stole Christmas, he said.
And
So that's
then
an
Merry
example of how that
Christmas, I
works.
brought
And in
you
the
$238
Everglades, the biggest
million.
local project in the entire bill was sponsored in part by Brian Mast from Florida, Republican, $447 million for Army Corps water projects in South Florida. Mast didn't mention the $40 million earmark he asked for as he attacked the bill. This isn't how Congress should work, he thundered.
And yet, it is.
Yet.
All right.
So House Republicans say they want to do away with earmarks, but as we can see, a lot of GOP lawmakers certainly like bringing home the bacon to their districts. We'll see in 2023 whether they get eliminated.
No, but anyway, they may eliminate earmarks. They won't eliminate the people who lie about whether or not they like earmarks. They could, but they'll just come up with a different way. And they just, it'll be an earmarks and everything but name. They sometimes will just write little provisions and say, well, the federal government will fund any project that happens to need $238 million and is taking place in this district in Texas and involves building whatever. What was the thing you wanted? Okay. But if anybody else has any that need exactly $238 million and are in this district, step forward. No other takers? Okay. And that's not an earmark. It's just clever legislative design.
Right. So for those of us who have said to the voters, you have to pay more attention to the courts. They're really important, and you don't pay enough attention to the courts.
Armando never says that.
Well, the judges know that, and the Senate apparently has gotten the message. Jamie points out the role of the U.S. Senate is no longer focused on legislating, but more often on confirming judicial nominees. Like, they don't pass anything.
No,
They're there to nominate and confirm stuff. The advise and consent role of the Senate. Everybody knows that.
Well, whose fault is that?
Right? Alan Drury, books, movies in the 50s.
Yeah.
Almost as good as It's Just a Bill. I'm Just a Bill. So the Senate has made history when it comes to our federal court, said Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, as Democrats muscled through 97 nominations in the 117th Congress.
All right.
68 federal district judges, 28 federal appeals court judges, 1 U.S. Supreme Court justice. 75% of these new judges are women. 11 of the 28 were black women in the appellate level. Senate okayed 85 judges during the same 2-year period under Donald Trump, but I think with a different makeup of who they were. And because we kept the Senate, we could look forward to a couple of more years of good stuff there. But there were a number of Biden nominees who didn't make it to the final floor vote, 25 at least. That group included 4 appeals court judges and 3 federal judges for New York, Washington State, and California. And a reminder, Signy Day, all of Biden's nominations will officially die when the 117th Congress comes to a formal close next week.
Yeah. That's well. The nominations will die. The nominees themselves, we assume, will continue to live.
Some of them.
Yeah, I mean, some of them won't.
And their nominations will come back, maybe. Some of them.
Yes, that's true. The nominations will be returned as unfinished business, and and the president has the option of saying, write a new date on this and send it back.
So, but how does that work in the new Congress? Do they have to start from scratch, or can they just say, remember that thing we didn't finish? Let's just put it on the agenda to finish it, or do they have to have new hearings? How does that work?
Well, I don't know. Now that I think about it, they don't always have to do that. If it's fairly recent, I mean, they could certainly demand new hearings, but and it might work differently if party control has changed, but here it hasn't.
And here it hasn't.
So they may very well say, well, the Judiciary Committee, I'll put it to the committee. Do you guys want to have new hearings, or shall we just say we know everything we need to know about this person and we move forward?
So just reestablishing the ancient pagan principle of like whoever has the gavel makes the rules.
Yeah. Right, that's true. So they can choose to, I guess they could, my guess is that they can just choose whether or not to go forward with it. And of course the Senate can say, well, we didn't dissolve. We're a continuing body. We still have the records of the person especially if we interviewed them like last week. But sometimes in the interest of comity, they may say, well, we'll go through some additional hearings, or if any circumstances have changed, if it turns out that they said that they had graduated from college and started a business and worked on Wall Street and they didn't, you might have a new hearing. But otherwise, I think they could probably say, we all know who this person is. We all had our sit-downs. We had our hearings. It's not required that they do it again. But I guess under certain circumstances, I suppose the ranking member of the Senate Judiciary Committee could say, for reasons, I really would like to have some more hearings. We can do it in a day, but let's bring this person back. And the chairperson may say, I will accede to your demands for political considerations this time, or no, you're being ridiculous. We'll move on. I don't know. But I guess also because it's a new nomination, I guess you got to make sure where your blue slips are and is everything in line. And somebody who didn't who returned the blue slip last time might not this time. Yeah, that's true. Then partisan control of the Senate may not have changed, but representation of a state may have.
Yeah, like North Carolina.
So there you go. You could have somebody say, well, the nominee is from my state and my predecessor returned the blue slip, but I won't. There's an issue.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll come up. We'll see.
Yeah.
For the most part, no. They can probably, if they get those nominations back, they can probably move quickly. Let's send them back.
Let's send them back.
All right.
So that pretty much wraps it up for today. I'll be
so.
back tomorrow. We'll talk about some other things.
All right, then.
I hope. At least I hope I'll be back tomorrow, and I hope we'll talk about other things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you come back tomorrow, we could talk about the same
like
things.
I did today. But, setting this up for the next
fun.
Congress, I think, is important because, it starts next week.
Yeah, that's right. As you said, sine die, adjournment, sine die. They wrap it all up. Although sometimes they just wait until the day that they're going to start the new Congress to adjourn the old one, sine die. That way there's no gaps between them.
Sunny day. Sunny day is coming.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Alrighty, so there's our music, and
Yes.
with that, I hope folks have a nice holiday interlude between Christmas and Thanksgiving or New Year's or whatever is coming up this week. It's, again, kind of a more relaxed day. Weather's changing, getting warmer, and we'll go from there. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, very good. We can look forward to it. Glass Onion, go see it. I'll see if I can do it in between then and now. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I was just wondering, I do have the Bird site open to try and see what was going on in terms of if anybody was using the KITM hashtag to let us know that we needed to switch directions or make some comment. And I noticed, how they have the little trending topics thing, and I wondered, all right, what is Stormy Daniels trending for at this point in time? Let's go see. Although I was a little worried about it, it's not a video. There's no video component to the show, so I figured we'd be all right, no matter what you click on. And anyway, as it turns out, I guess this is somebody's been over the tax returns on that they finally got out of Donald Trump's hands, thanks to after the 4 years of litigation, and I guess the hush money payment to Stormy Daniels is taken as a business expense deduction on his taxes. So that's pretty gutsy, we'll say. But I suppose I don't think that's what he was looking to hide. I mean, I think at this point that's kind of that cat's out of the bag, I guess. But anyway, that's that's really something. Okay, so I haven't seen any write-ups of that story, but that's what everybody's talking about over on the Bird site, at least with respect to the fact that Stormy Daniels is trending. All right, I think I want to get off of that story now and head back. Let's see, other things that I had in store for you. Well, I guess they're all in pocket. Let's go take a look. George Santos, still in the news. Can't get rid of this guy. I don't think there's any new lies that have been exposed, because I think they pretty much went over the whole resume and everything on it was a lie. And there's nothing we haven't gotten to yet, as far as I know. I don't know. I haven't looked at his resume to check, but nothing new. However, some new commentary and some new developments. For instance, will they let me read this thing? I think they let me read it once. We'll see whether they block it this time. No. Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, letting me read this story anyway. Republican Jewish coalition says George Santos not welcome at any future events. So they've passed judgment. Now, yesterday's big development was I never said I was Jewish. I said I had some Jewish background in my ancestry, and that makes me Jew-ish, like almost kind of sort of like a Jew, but Jew-ish. I'm Catholic, and I've always said I'm Catholic. And then, of course, people spent the day digging up quotes of him saying, things like, I'm a proud American Jew, or as a proud American Jew, I've traveled many times to Israel. He was going on about his support of Israel and how obvious it was that he would be supporting Israel because he's an American Jew, and he's not. And then the claim that he said he never was Jewish is also a lie. So the lie about the lies is now on the record. So that's kind of fun and cool. And of course, the Republican Jewish Coalition, had a big to-do for him. They had an event. They invited him there. He was introduced as one of two newly elected Republican members of Congress who were Jewish. And he didn't at any point say, no, I really shouldn't come to this. I'm not actually Jewish. You misunderstood me. You misunderstood what I meant. He went and he accepted the accolades, and I don't know whether there was awards or plaques or anything. Free dinner, I'm sure. And then the applause, and then it turns out he's not one. And it was real interesting because I think they mentioned in this article, the Republican Jewish Coalition is small, but they are always looking for signs of growth. They think every year is going to be the year that Republicans lure American Jewish voters away from the Democratic Party. They are overwhelmingly Democratic in their sympathies, and Republicans among American Jews are, if not a rarity, then the considered minority. But they keep thinking this is the year. Every year they think Republican fanatical, we'll say mouthing anyway, of support for Israel, which comes from many different angles, but rarely, constitutes genuine love for certainly rarely genuine love for Jewish people, much less Israelis. But, instead it's strictly, it seems chiefly driven by dominionist weirdo theories of, if we support Israel, they'll spark a regional war that will turn into worldwide Armageddon and pave the way for the second coming of Jesus, which, I'm not that crazy about the idea myself. Probably Israelis not that wild about it either. But then they just say, forget that other part. Who cares about the why? We just want you to know we support Israel. Anyhow, they think, though, that that there will one day be a great epiphany among American Jews that Republicans love and support Israel much more than Democrats do, and that's the only way we should decide how to cast our vote, and that they're all going to do this, even though chiefly, in the main, American Jews, while they, it would be wrong to say they don't care about Israel. It would be wrong to say that views on Israel drive their voting decisions, that is their chief consideration. It's not, and it's really quite insulting that people would think as much. But anyway, it works, I guess, among ultra-Orthodox Jews and I don't know who else, extremely rich Jews, I guess, that love the tax breaks, but nowhere else. Anyway, they're always trying to make the argument that this is the year it's going to break in their favor, and that the Republican Jewish Coalition is growing. And so any proof they have of that is enormously important to them. And that's where George Santos and I guess the other newly elected person that they thought was a Republican Jew come in. And, this is points of tremendous pride to them. We got two more. And it turns out that 50% of the hall is a complete fraud. That's very embarrassing to them. So, as opposed to okay, so he's not Jewish. Fine. He's out. But this is actually sort of personally embarrassing. So Republican Jewish Coalition says he's not welcome at any future events. After confirming a New York Times expose claiming much of his professional accomplishments are fabricated, Santos says, I never claimed to be Jewish, and that he is in fact a Catholic who is Jewish. That's the subheader on this piece. Who's writing it? Ben Samuels. Again, it's for Haaretz. the Israeli paper at state-lined Washington, of course, because it's all taking place here. The Republican Jewish coalition formally denounced New York Congressman-elect George Santos for misrepresenting his Jewish heritage, among numerous other parts of his biography that have proven to be factually incorrect. We are very disappointed in Congressman-elect Santos. He deceived us and misrepresented his heritage. They don't make any bones about this. They're very clear what happened here. In public comments and to us personally, he previously claimed to be Jewish. Now he says he never did that. He has begun his tenure in Congress on a very wrong note. He will not be welcome at any future RJC event. RJC CEO Matt Brooks said. Despite Santos's claims that his grandparents were Jews who fled the Nazis, reports prove that his grandparents were Brazil-born Catholics. Santos's media rounds come 1 week after a New York Times report on Santos's personal and professional life brought virtually every aspect of the Long Island Republican's life story into question. Even though I've always said I'm Catholic, I grew up Catholic, I've always loved and had a deep respect for my Jewish heritage, and I will continue to do so, Santos told City and State. He further told the New York Post that, quote, I never claimed to be Jewish. I am Catholic. Because I learned my maternal family had a Jewish background, I said I was Jewish. But yesterday, of course, I think a couple of television shows were able to pull up his quotes about that, right? As a proud American Jew, blah, 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 blah. Well, that's pretty unequivocal. Anyway, in fact, Santos has told City and State that his mother's Jewish beliefs were his own. That's pretty unequivocal. He also has accepted invitations from the Republican Jewish Coalition honoring him as one of 2 incoming Jewish Republican representatives in Congress. And I guess quoting his speech there, we're no stranger to persecution, his family, that is. My grandfather fleeing Ukraine in the 1920s to Belgium, then fleeing Belgium to Brazil in 1940. It's a story of survival, of tenacity, of grit, as we like to call it, Santos had told the RJC. Santos also attended an RJC-sponsored Hanukkah event the night before the New York Times story was published. So I guess he wanted to get a little, some latkes and sufganiyot in before he had to reveal that he wasn't Jewish, which, honestly, you're welcome to celebrate Hanukkah. Just, you probably shouldn't lie about whether you're Jewish or not. Just say, I'm an interested party and I like Hanukkah and I like you. They'll let you have the stuff. It's good food, right? Santos further advertised himself as a, quote, proud American Jew, unquote, during the campaign, highlighting numerous previous supposed trips to Israel, which now I guess they should check and see. Has he even been to Israel? We might as well check that. That could be a lie, too. Santos told Jewish Insider, and you might have wondered why they were calling him, that he was surprised that Jews were distancing themselves from him amid mounting evidence that his profile as a Jewish Republican was fueled by inaccurate information. People are rushing to disinherit me from being Jewish, because you're not. Despite support for Israel and the Jewish community, he said. Listen to him play the victim. Ready? Here's somebody who actually cares about Jews, cares about Israel, and somebody willing to fight for them, and we have people pushing me away. Well, they'll accept your support for Israel. It just, you can't say you're Jewish. Are you? You're not? Then don't say so. Say you're a supporter. They'll be happy with that. The RJC warmly welcomed Santos at its annual confab in Las Vegas last month as one of 2 newly elected Republican Jewish members of Congress. Santos's election was further highlighted by the RJC as evidence that the Jewish community is shifting away from the Democratic Party, with diverse candidates such as Santos acting as walking evidence, except he's not. He's evidence of the opposite, and that's embarrassing to them. Following the initial revelations, the RJC reached out to Santos's office, calling on him to provide the public an explanation. While Santos admitted to falsifying his professional and personal records, he insisted he would serve in Congress as planned while continuing to represent his New York district, which includes a large Orthodox Jewish constituency. I am not a criminal, Santos told the New York Post, meaning he's a criminal. This will not deter me from having good legislative success. I'm sure plenty of obstacles stand in the way of that. I will be effective. I will be good. To City and State, he suggested that he might still have some Jewish support, and he might. He said that he had gotten a text from someone, he did not say who told him, "I don't care what you say, you're still an MOT," using an acronym meaning member of the tribe, that is shorthand for Jewish. He added, "It feels good." Okay, I doubt whether he got that, and I doubt whether anybody would say that. You're most pointedly not, but whatever. You could say it just to make him feel better. Now, there's another piece on George Santos, and we've heard enough, I would say. But this is Amanda Marcotte, writing in Salon, and I thought it might be interesting to hear her take on these things. George Santos, of course, you know who he is, but this is a slightly different take. George Santos is the Republican Party's future, a shameless con man. And I think the door is, now wide open for that. I mean, we've been saying for a long time that Donald Trump has changed the way you can campaign in America, certainly as a Republican. And we weren't really certain whether it would translate for anybody else. George Santos is probably the best evidence of just the general formula of just lie your ass off and say whatever the hell you think you got to say to get elected, and just get elected and then say, too bad. That's model that has certainly been proven here. I mean, we'll see how long it lasts, but he certainly can expect to serve. They're not going to kick him out anytime soon. I guess there's previous evidence, like Ron DeSantis, just in terms of being a total, just throwing all decency out the window and being a total jackass in governance. That model certainly has been proven to be effective as well. And this is sort of a next step in the evolution. Trump opened the door, and now every grifter and two-bit criminal sees job security in pandering to the GOP base. I think she's on to something here. One thing was dead certain, she writes, within moments of the New York Times publishing its expose of the many lies of George Santos, there was zero chance that this brand new Republican congressman-elect from New York would be shamed into giving up his seat. Perhaps that didn't seem obvious to everyone at first, especially those with lingering memories of the pre-Trump era, when we all pretended to believe that Republican voters cared about hypocrisy, lying, overt racism, sexual abuse, or any of the other personal or professional scandals that used to take politicians down routinely. But I never doubted for a moment that Santos would move onward toward being seated, and that the incoming Republican House majority would allow it. On December 19th, the Times published its first article making clear that little or nothing on Santos's resume was true. He had never worked for Citigroup or Goldman Sachs. He did not run a pet charity. He hadn't graduated from Baruch College or apparently from any other college. His business, the DeVolder organization, appears to be fraudulent. Nothing in that article convinced me that Santos wouldn't be sworn into Congress, and neither did the evidence that he is almost certainly not Jewish, as he had claimed to be, and that he had lied about his grandparents escaping the Holocaust. My faith that he will be seated in January 3rd remains unswerving, and has only been strengthened now that Democrats are calling on GOP leadership to expel Santos, which will only make Republicans dig in harder. Now, questions about Santos's possible criminality are beginning to emerge. According to the Times report, he pled guilty to check fraud in Brazil, but apparently left the country without serving his sentence. Despite numerous signs that Santos's business career is mostly fictional and evidence of significant personal debt in the recent past, he somehow lent his congressional campaign $700,000. Indeed, pretty much everything we know about his professional career, which isn't much, comes with a field of red flags. Despite all of this, the only way he doesn't join Congress as an esteemed member of the Republican caucus is if New York prosecutors can nail him for something first. I believe this in the way I believe that chocolate is delicious and cats are cute. After all, what is the modern GOP if not a holding station for every two-bit criminal and grifter who wants the job security that can only come with exploiting the endlessly credulous Republican base? The party can no more start kicking out the fraudsters than it can stop trying to cut taxes for the rich. This is just who they are and what they do. George Santos is in no sense an anomaly. He is the Republican present and, even more to the point, the Republican future. That much was made evident by the painfully predictable reactions of GOP voters in New York's 3rd District, where Santos beat Democrat Robert Zimmerman, who actually is Jewish, for the seat left open by Democratic Representative Tom Suozzi. In interviews with Politico, random Republican voters justified their continued support with an epic display of whataboutism, mostly based on Fox News-derived fictions about Democrats. Truthfully, I don't trust the Democrats on anything they say. I see it on the TV and I turn it off, said one woman in a typical example. Santos's voters didn't exactly defend him so much as argue, on no particular evidence, that whatever he did, the Democrats are worse. This is what gets delicately described as negative partisanship in mainstream media and political science textbooks, and all too often treated as an equal problem on both sides. Of course, it's true that both parties include some voters who are more motivated by dislike of the opposing party than by support of their own, but with Democrats, that at least has some basis in real-world concerns, given that Republicans are the party of abortion bans and the January 6th insurrection. But on the other side, Republican voters mostly coast on hyperbolic vitriol about the evils of Democrats, which are at best vague insinuations of corruption and at worst outright lies and QAnon-style conspiracy theories. Convincing Republicans and Republican voters to believe that Democrats are literally the worst people imaginable certainly helps Republicans win elections, but it's also destabilizing the party from within because shady characters of all flavors now understand that no sin or crime is so great that it cannot be wiped away by running for office as a Republican. The result is a party full of cranks, chronic liars, and petty criminals, a situation that gets worse every election cycle, as demonstrated by the Santos fiasco. I think that's a good point, right? You're going to just dilute the effectiveness of your party eventually, I guess, although maybe not among Republican voters, but in general, if you just make yourself a haven for anybody who's trying to escape prosecution. If you're willing to say Republican-ish things, and even if you don't actually have the background that would make you a good Republican candidate, you just lie and make one up. In certain districts, this will actually work. And if you get elected to Congress, you can just shrug your shoulders and say, yeah, I guess there might have been some crime back there, but who cares? Anyway, as usual, Donald Trump didn't invent this problem, but only distilled it to its essence. This all goes back well before him, as evidenced by the gold bugs and snake oil peddlers who have long been the dominant advertisers in right-wing media. Trump probably decided to run as a Republican because he saw how vulnerable the party was to manipulators and con artists. But his 2016 election dramatically amplified the problem. Every charlatan in the country watched as Trump paid no political price whatsoever for a barrage of scandals involving corruption, malfeasance, gaslighting, lies, and eventually actual sedition. To this point, he's paid virtually no legal price either. It may be fun to laugh at Trump for ranting about his total immunity on social media, but when you consider that Attorney General Merrick Garland has steadfastly refused, at least so far, to arrest Trump for any of his dozens of possible or likely federal crimes, you might be forced to conclude that Trump has a point. We still don't know where George Santos got the money that allowed him to run and win a congressional election in a pivotal swing district. But he's still likely to be seated next week with no serious impediment, offering America's swindler class another reason to believe that going into Republican politics is like getting a license to commit fraud. And I would add here, it's the way we used to think of televangelists a little while ago, and I guess we probably still. I don't think they've really shaken that reputation. But the idea that you could make a great living as a con artist believing none of what you say, but be a hugely successful televangelist or traveling preacher, if you just mouth the right words and don't care about how you get your money, a fabulous living is available to you. Of course, if you actually believe it but also just mouth words, you can do the same, like, say, Joel Osteen. He may actually be a true believer, but not in the tough part of Christianity or the helping people who aren't like you part of Christianity, but, all the other parts. He's great with it, I'm sure. Anyway, so there's no real chance of political backlash in a situation like this with the GOP voter base heavily dosed up on Fox News hate. Worse yet, it seems increasingly clear that federal law enforcement is too afraid of looking partisan, quote-unquote partisan, to prosecute Republican politicians over anything, so there are no serious consequences either. Sam Bankman-Fried, that's the guy whose name we couldn't think of, and he appears in this article. He may be kicking himself for getting into cryptocurrency instead of GOP politics if what he wanted was the ability to defraud whoever you like with impunity. Yeah, but the numbers are bigger in cryptocurrency, so you get richer faster. Consider that just 3 days after Bankman-Fried was arrested in the Bahamas, there's the answer to that one, Trump rolled out his major announcement, which turned out to be a naked ripoff. A series of laughably terrible NFTs priced at a whopping $99 a pop. They sold out almost immediately despite having less intrinsic value than chewed up bubblegum. Unsurprisingly, this enterprise may not have been entirely legal due to some swiftly documented copyright infringement issues. That's pretty funny too. He may have stolen the artwork that he used. But nobody involved in the scam is worried about getting sued or facing prosecution since Teflon Don has successfully conveyed the impression that the law can't touch him. They can touch you, but all right. We'll see about that. There's a tendril of hope for justice after the criminal convictions delivered against the Trump Organization earlier this month. But we seem no closer to putting Trump in prison, and it's not even clear that he will suffer financially from any of the charges and investigations he still faces. He'll just keep living like a billionaire, even if he's actually hundreds of millions in the red. Meanwhile, the Republican growth sector is visible in folks like Representative Murdery Trader Green of Georgia, who treat the job as a social media grift and unabashedly side with far-right extremists and January 6th insurrectionists with no real fallout. When Santos is sworn in on Capitol Hill next week, it will send a bat signal across the land. Come hither, crooks and swindlers, con artists and hustlers all. You have a home with us where you'll be free to cheat whoever you like and break any law. The base will forgive you pretty much anything except being a Democrat. All right. I mean, I think so. I didn't think there was any more that we really could say about George Santos. But, and I think everybody sort of understood that this was the likely upshot of the George Santos situation. But it seemed like a good idea to lay it out this way. And she always does a good job with that. All right. Let's see. I wanted to kind of continue, I think, with a couple of things we've read or begun reading in the past and not finished. But, the timing is a little bit awkward. But we started yesterday with a piece by Philip Rotner in The Bulwark that John Shiflett had suggested to us. And maybe we can try and figure out where we left off or recap it. But by the time we figure that out, it'll be time for the next break. But that might be a good way out of it. Remember this piece that began yesterday, the title, What the January 6th Report Says About the Fake Electors Scheme. You might recall, that we talked about it. And if not, you might remember the subheader that reads as a quote, freaking Trump idiots wanted someone to fly original elector papers to the Senate president. I like that line. How far did we get in this one? I'll see if we can figure it out, but I don't know whether it's going to make any sense to just start up. So maybe we'll recap by rereading. How about that? And then we'll take our break and come back and finish up. On December 14th, 2020, Republican operatives in at least 5 states, each of which had already officially certified Joe Biden as the winner, forged and submitted to Congress and the National Archives fake electoral college certificates purporting to certify Donald Trump, not Biden, as the quote-unquote duly elected winner. The left-leaning watchdog group American Oversight first blew the whistle on the fake elector scheme in March of 2021, but it wasn't until Rachel Maddow devoted a series of shows to it in January of 2022 that it really captured public attention. I just can't believe that that's the case, but all right. The fake electors were hardly the worst of what Trump visited on us. For sheer journalistic sex appeal, remember that phrasing? A scheme by a bunch of unknown, bumbling state functionaries to phony up some documents just can't compete with the president sicking an armed mob on the Capitol. It is hard to compete with, that's true. But the fake elector scandal, while not the most shocking of Trump's predations, has long looked like the straightest route to cracking open the entire 2020 election scheme and to getting Donald Trump indicted and convicted of a crime, at least until the Mar-a-Lago stolen documents scandal was revealed. But that's another story. Yes, I remember that part. If Trump was a knowing participant in the scheme, more on that later, his reasons for doing so would make absolutely no difference. Why? Coming next. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, the same guy who was just talking to you a second ago. Our Patreon subscription drive is still going strong, with over 175 monthly donors who help keep us on the air. If we've helped keep you going during the pandemic, why not return the favor and help us keep going so we can all be together for the next disaster? Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it easy to make secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. Maybe you'd like to thank us for keeping you sane during the Trump era. Maybe you're looking forward to in-depth explanations of what's going on in the Biden administration. Whatever it is that keeps you listening, we need your help to keep bringing it to you. And hey, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running with those options too. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We literally could not do this without you. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's continue on with this reading in the Bulwark. We left off the last sentence in the mid-paragraph here, noting that if Trump was a knowing participant in the scheme, and he definitely was, I think we've established that by this point, but more on that later. It says his reasons for doing so would make absolutely no difference. Even if he really truly believed the election was stolen, it would not be a defense to criminal charges for participating in a fraudulent scheme to submit forged documents as the official results of state presidential elections. To the contrary, his belief that he was stealing back a stolen election would be highly incriminating proof of his motive, not a defense. By the way, I've seen in the last couple of days, and I wish I had put it aside, that I guess somewhere in the communications among the fake electors was at least one in which one of the fake electors was lamenting having been involved in the whole thing, saying, I hope they're not thinking of doing something stupid with this, like pretending that we are the actual and the only valid certificate of the electoral vote. I was told, we remember that the scheme, as it was sold to most of them, was, well, we just want to prepare an alternative Republican document in case we win one of our court cases. And they throw out the Democratic electors. We want this one to be there as a viable alternative so that our state can have its electoral votes counted. And under those circumstances, some of these fake electors were willing to go ahead with this and say, well, only as an alternative, if you win your court case, then I'll allow you to bring my name forward. But if you don't win your court case, you can't say that I believed I was legitimately elected as the, as one of the one and only, rather as one of the members of the one and only legitimate slate of electors. That's not what I'm representing here. But I'll sign on the other basis. And of course, you can't sign the thing and hand things over to Donald Trump people because they're not going to honor the agreement. And he was pretty upset about that. And he should be upset with himself for giving his signature over that easily. Anyway, so like we said, even if he believed that the election really was stolen, it doesn't matter. What he did was a fraud and a forgery nonetheless, and you can't do that. Contrast that, for instance, with a potential charge that Trump tried to corruptly alter the results in Georgia in his infamous phone call to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. When Trump asked Raffensperger to, quote, find enough votes to flip the Georgia election, was he asking him to legitimately root out and disqualify votes that he honestly believes were fraudulent? Or was he asking them to manufacture votes? In the real world of courts, unanimous juries and proof beyond a reasonable doubt showing that Trump was only asking Raffensperger to root out and disqualify illegally cast votes would be, if not a defense, then at least a complication. It would give Trump's lawyers something to work with. And while I don't think Trump gave a damn whether or not there actually were illegal votes in Georgia, Trump operates in a fact-free, amoral universe that makes it pointless, if not impossible, to try to discern what he, quote, really believed. There's enough in the transcript of the call to make that argument to a jury. Same with the charge that Trump incited the January 6th insurrection. Maybe, but remember, we are reading the Bulwark here. And they do tend to come at things from a relatively conservative viewpoint. So we might not agree with everything. But here's what they're saying among themselves. Trump has so far not been directly linked to the violence perpetrated in the Capitol attack. Yes, he sent an armed mob to the Capitol, and he told them to fight like hell and take back the country. But his defense team will argue that Trump was using permissible, albeit very strong, political speech to exhort his followers to send a loud, angry message to Congress, not to physically attack it. He did, after all, every once in a while he would throw in the word peaceful. And, that should avail you of nothing with reasonable jurors if you say, I think we should very peacefully murder and totally destroy the enemy, tear their bodies limb from limb and leave them to be eaten by the vultures peacefully. That's not going to help you. So it's a matter of degrees how much rhetoric there really was, and does peaceful being mouthed every once in a while really mitigate things. It's up to a jury to decide. Anyway, yes, he sent in a armed mob to the Capitol, told him to fight like hell, but his defense team will argue he was using permissible, albeit very strong political speech, right? Not exhorting them to physically attack. And again, there's arguably enough weasel wording in Trump's January 6th speech to convince at least a single juror, and therefore give Trump the benefit of the doubt for burying the word peacefully in the middle of his otherwise incendiary speech. It's one thing to believe the obvious, that Trump was acting like a mob boss, sending coded signals that his gangland cronies fully understood. It's another thing to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt to the satisfaction of every one of 12 randomly selected jurors. Again, it's complicated, and prosecutors hate complicated. Not so the fake elector scheme. Turning back to that, if it can be proved that Trump intentionally participated in the scheme to try to pass off forged documents as official state documents and then use the phony documents to overturn an election, it wouldn't make any difference why he did so. The act of participating in the scheme in and of itself, regardless of his purported reasons for doing so, would still run afoul of all kinds of state and federal criminal laws. And reminder that a lot of the same stuff is true of the Pervolago documents case as well. But as he points out, it's another story. The path to prosecuting Trump for the fake elector scheme, either as a standalone crime or as a crucial element of a larger conspiracy to overturn the results of a presidential election, became much clearer last week, or the week before, with the publication of the final report of the House January 6th committee. Until the publication of the report, I guess it still is last week, right? There were arguably two open questions. One, how high in the levels of Trump world did this scheme go? And two, could at least some of the perpetrators assert a credible defense that they understood it was just a contingency plan to have electors in place in the event that the courts or state legislatures determined that Trump and not Biden was the winner in one or more of the 5 states? The report answered both questions. One, the scheme went all the way to the top, right up to Trump himself. And two, while some of the lower-level participants in the scheme, most likely some of the state-level GOP operatives who actually signed the phony certificates, may have been duped into believing that it was a contingency plan, the higher-ups who created and executed the scheme knew better. They knew it was an action plan. In thinking about how far up the Trump world hierarchy the scheme went, start by forgetting about the fake electors themselves. Although the true plan was sufficiently transparent that some potential signers backed away right from the start, smart, some participants might have innocently bought into the notion of a contingency plan. Others might have just been confused about what they were getting themselves into, although I was just following orders isn't much of a defense. And of course, others might have been knowing participants in the scheme, but who cares? Better to not indict them all at all than to indict only them and let the real culprits off the hook. Better to leverage their self-protective instincts and get them to point the finger at the individuals who put them up to it, including the architects of the scheme. Principally, according to the January 6th committee reports, John Eastman and Kenneth Chesebro, lawyers who advised Trump in his campaign. Those would be up at the top. Of course, senior Trump enablers who knowingly helped them execute the scheme, most notably Rudy Giuliani and Mark Meadows, and Donald Trump, who, quote, oversaw it himself, unquote. According to the report, by December 8th, 2020, less than 3 weeks after Chesebro first laid the groundwork for the scheme in a November 18th memo, President Trump had decided to pursue the fake elector plan and was driving it. By mid-December, Trump had enlisted the assistance of RNC Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel in the scheme, worked with Rudy Giuliani on its implementation, and been informed that litigation would be filed in 4 states, quote, to create a pretext to claim that it was still possible for the fake electors to be authorized retroactively, unquote. So, it appears that the previously missing link, the link between the fake elector scheme and Trump himself, is no longer missing. Trump not only participated in the fake elector scheme, he orchestrated it. With Trump's knowing participation seemingly clear, the only remaining question appears to be whether the perpetrators can credibly soft sell the scheme as merely a contingency plan and not an action plan to overturn an election. They can't, says our author here. The report makes it plain that plan was never to collect the signatures. The report makes it plain that, the plan, he didn't put in that the plan was never to collect the signatures, file them away, and only pull them out in the unlikely event that a court or state legislature reversed the results of one or more of the elections in the 5 states. The plan was to use the fake certificates affirmatively. And here, a quote from the report. This effort was aimed directly at the President of the Senate, which under the Constitution is the Vice President, in his role at the joint session of Congress on January 6th. President Trump and his advisors wanted Vice President Pence to disregard real Electoral College votes for former Vice President Biden, in favor of those fake competing electoral slates. Now back to the analysis. According to the report, public comments made by Rudy Giuliani and Stephen Miller on December 14th, suggesting that the phony certificates were merely contingent, were window dressing. That pretense was dropped in short order. In fact, Team Trump was actively plotting to execute a strategy designed largely by Eastman to use the slates of fake electors as a pretext to prevent or delay certification of Biden's election. Nobody on the leadership team was mincing words. A December 13th memo from Chesebro to Rudy Giuliani suggested that while presiding over the counting, Vice President Pence could toss out Biden's actual electoral votes for any state where Trump had fake electors, quote, because there are 2 slates of votes. And nobody was waiting for a court order that they knew would never come. If there were ever any doubt about that, of course, it is dispelled by the fact that the schemers not only planned to use the phony certificates affirmatively, they did use them affirmatively, albeit ineptly. Ever incompetent in executing even the most clerical ministerial tasks, Team Trump orchestrated not only a massive fraud, but a comedy of errors. The phony certifications from Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, New Mexico, and Pennsylvania failed to meet the requirements of federal law because they bore no state seal and no evidence that the required state officials had delivered them. The submissions from Georgia, New Mexico, and Pennsylvania lacked the required approval of the governors of those states. Other fake Trump electors failed to follow state rules specifying where they were required to meet, but nevertheless certified that they had done so. The comedy of errors morphed into outright farce with Team Trump's frantic, buffoonish last-minute efforts to get them to the church on time. By early January, the phony certificates from Michigan and Wisconsin had not yet arrived in Washington, and Team Trump freaked out. They arranged to fly the certificates to Washington for hand delivery to the vice president. Or, in the undying words of a Wisconsin Republican Party official, quote, freaking Trump idiots want someone to fly original elector papers to the Senate president, i.e. Pence. Speaking of freaking Trump idiots, enter Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson, stage right. Johnson, implored by the Trump campaign's lead attorney in Wisconsin to assign a staffer, quote, to get a document on Wisconsin electors to you for the VP immediately, accommodated by putting not just some staffer, but his chief of staff on the job. That plan died a humiliating death when an aide to Pence brushed off Johnson's request, bluntly telling Johnson's chief of staff, do not give that to the vice president. Or to him, is what he actually said. Do not to give that to him. Bracketing they put in, oh yeah, that's the vice president. Suffice it to say that none of this activity was triggered by a court or legislative order to the effect that Trump and not Biden had won any of these 5 states. That never happened anywhere. So it was just a contingency plan defense is a non-starter. All that's left is for special counsel Jack Smith to examine whether the admissibility and strength of the evidence of Trump's direct involvement in the fake elector scheme, either as a standalone crime or as part of a wider conspiracy, is sufficient to convince a jury of Trump's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The report strongly suggests that it is. Okay. Thank you very much to, is it Philip Ratner? Rotner. Okay. Philip Rotner over at the Bulwark for that piece. I think, cuts through nicely, clarifies what's going on. Well, let's see. I got a couple other different directions we can go. Shall we? We could continue on, or maybe I can save that for later on, and we can restart the story of the weirdo Michigan lawyer that we were reading the other day. Maybe that. We'll go back into that one. Do you remember I entered this person into the docket, basically, for us to take a good look at and add to our rogues gallery of weirdos. This is the story of the Michigan lawyer pushing Trump's voter fraud fictions through U.S. courts, Stephanie Lambert. You remember that she was a defense attorney, not doing so great financially necessarily, and decided to jump on the Trump grift train and push big lie, Kraken-type lawsuits in exchange for being able to raise money for them, I guess, from Republican supporters. So let's see. Where did we leave off in this one? I think we read through all of this. And I know we read this part. Did we? How far did we get on this? Maybe this was sort of the setup for where we might have stopped here. We had read that Norm Eisen, longtime election lawyer and former ethics counsel to Democratic President Barack Obama, seized Lambert, Stephanie Lambert, the subject of our story, as part of an ongoing threat to democracy, that she's an important figure in the dangerous election denial movement. Lambert is still extremely active. The movement is not vanquished. Right? Lambert has mostly operated out of the spotlight, which is why we haven't heard her name very much. She has worked with small town officials to access the election equipment and data used to advance baseless claims in the media and the courts, according to the Attorney General's investigation and a review of court documents and right-wing websites. While she has aligned herself with Trump-supporting Republicans, Lambert, though, has described her work as nonpartisan and revealed little in public about her political beliefs, and Reuters was unable to even determine whether she had a party affiliation, right? Michigan's criminal probe into the alleged roles of Lambert and others is in gaining unauthorized access to vote tabulators is ongoing. And last year, a federal judge sanctioned and referred her for possible disbarment for joining a lawsuit aimed at reversing Biden's win in Michigan based on a string of false statements, including that China and Iran accessed voting software and manipulated the results. That, in case you're wondering exactly how far out on the crazy wing is she. David Fink, a lawyer for the city of Detroit, is leading a campaign to sanction and disbar Lambert and 8 other attorneys who joined that Michigan lawsuit. Lambert, Fink said, is a leading architect of a strategy that jeopardizes future elections, using courts to promote and lend credibility to bogus voter fraud claims. He called her the queen of alternative facts in an interview. Because of the successes that these had in creating a false narrative, Fink said election deniers will pursue this strategy again and again until the courts slap them down and levy appropriate sanctions. That was when it launched into a examination of her marriage and money problems in the past. And you may recall that there's some dispute about her divorce filings in the past and the question of who's the victim of whom in the breakup of this marriage. But suffice to say that it left her without means and struggling financially, which sort of sets her up for the opportunity to join in on Republican grift. Let's see. We got through this part, and now the big break. So suffice to say, again, that she's struggling both professionally and personally, largely because of this ongoing divorce drama. Lambert owes her entry into the realm of election denial to one of Trump's most outspoken allies, Sidney Powell. Remember this? A former federal prosecutor and white-collar crime attorney who made headlines seeking to overturn Trump's loss in the chaotic aftermath of the 2020 election. As Trump zeroed in on vote rigging allegations in Michigan, Lambert emailed the White House, according to her July 2021 video interview with 2 right-wing websites. She attached an affidavit showing evidence of voter fraud, Lambert said, without specifying who alleged what in the document. The email bounced back. That's when she reached out to Powell and Rudy Giuliani, who led Trump's legal team. By the way, the fact that it bounced back means she couldn't even manage to find a way to get an email into a legitimate email inbox in the White House. And I mean, that just comes from having the wrong address. I mean, what kind of way is that to start your work? Anyway, it doesn't matter because she then reached out to Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani and sent them the affidavit, and Powell brought her on as a local attorney to handle the appeal of a federal lawsuit filed in November of 2020 against Michigan's governor. The suit sought to overturn Trump's loss in the battleground state. The suit made a host of fantastical claims. It alleged that corrupt election officials or foreign actors had rigged equipment made by Dominion voting systems, now you're in trouble, to produce 289,866 illegal votes, quote-unquote illegal votes in Michigan, nearly double Biden's margin of victory there. It claimed Dominion software had been hacked by, quote, agents acting on behalf of China and Iran. Dominion has repeatedly denied its machines were involved in voter fraud. Giuliani didn't respond to requests for comment. Powell declined to comment, saying only that Reuters' inquiries were wrong on so many points without detailing any inaccuracies. And remember, I don't have time to correct you. Well, we're almost out of time here. The idea that China hacked America's election systems was one variation on the hammer and scorecard conspiracy theory. I never did hear that term anywhere else, which posits that votes were manipulated with a supercomputer originally built for U.S. intelligence agencies to spy on foreign adversaries. As previously reported by Reuters, the theory became a central tenet of the rigged election movement. I'd like to read a little bit more about that, I think. On December 6th, 2020, Lambert filed another federal suit against Michigan officials, also challenging the election results. This time, she sought a court order to impound all voting machines and software in Michigan for expert inspection. The suit asserted, without evidence, that there had been systematic attempts at mass fraud throughout the state of Michigan and the United States of America involving rigged voting machines. That's when we discovered that Lambert's client was Dar Leaf, sheriff of Michigan's rural Barry County. Leaf is a leading figure among the far-right constitutional sheriffs, many of whom have backed Trump's stolen election claims. The sheriff's movement promotes a fringe legal theory that local sheriffs are more powerful in their jurisdictions than state or federal authorities, even including the U.S. president. That's a very convenient theory for sheriffs to hold. The day after Lambert filed the suit, the Republican-appointed federal judge skewered its speculative leaps and hazy and nebulous allegations. Leaf and Lambert withdrew the suit in February after the judge ordered them to justify their claims. Lambert's federal suit with Powell was also fizzling out. They voluntarily withdrew the case on January 14th, 2021, after the state and city of Detroit debunked the litigation's claims and called for sanctions against Powell, Lambert, and other lawyers for promoting the falsehoods in court. So I guess every once in a while they file suits, and every time they file them, they get brought up for possible sanctions, and then they just drop the suit and withdraw it so that there's no basis to try them for sanctions anymore. All right, next section, a conspiracy of conspiracy theorists. How fun. Despite the losses, Lambert's career was up and running as a legal warrior for the election denial movement. Lambert has played a central role in the national effort by a loose network of pro-Trump lawyers and activists to gain unauthorized access to voting systems, according to police and court records of the alleged breaches. Reuters has documented 26 incidents nationally, half of them in Michigan, in which unauthorized parties are accused of breaching or attempting to breach voting systems, often with the help of sympathetic local officials. Very dangerous. Lambert was allegedly involved in 7 of those incidents in 3 states. In Michigan, starting in early 2021, Lambert helped organize, quote, a coordinated plan to gain access to voting tabulators, unquote, in 3 counties to seek evidence of fraud, according to an investigation by the Michigan State Police and Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel. Nessel, a Democrat, said in a legal filing that Lambert orchestrated the alleged conspiracy with 2 other Michigan figures in the election denial movement. One of them, Matthew DePerno, had led a failed lawsuit challenging the 2020 voting results in Antrim County, where an incorrect election night tally stemming from a swiftly corrected human error featured heavily in pro-Trump narratives about vote rigging. The other was a Republican state lawmaker, Dare Rendon, D-A-I-R-E, Rendon, who has embraced Trump's stolen election claims. Rendon has promoted the QAnon conspiracy theory, according to media reports and messages she sent to a township clerk, which Reuters obtained in a public records request. Rendon and DePerno didn't comment in response to inquiries about their alleged involvement in voting system breaches. Lambert was part of DePerno's Antrim election team, she said, at an April 14th, 2021 meeting with the commissioners of Michigan's Sheboygan County. According to a video of the meeting reviewed by Reuters, she was seeking access to the county's voting equipment, an effort later shut down by the Secretary of State. Ultimately, Lambert and DePerno coordinated their efforts to gain illegal access to 5 voting tabulators in other jurisdictions across Michigan, Nessel's office alleged. State laws prohibit all but a handful of authorized individuals from handling the machines. One tabulator was taken in the spring of 2021 from a township in rural Barry County, a Trump stronghold where Dar Leaf, one of Lambert's clients, is sheriff. The township clerk told state police she gave the tabulator to an outside investigator working with the sheriff's office so it could be, quote, forensically examined. According to a state police report reviewed by Reuters, the clerk, according to the report, said the sheriff's office had asked her to give the machines to the investigator. The Attorney General alleges the tabulator was removed illegally on March 9th, 2021, and taken to the Detroit area where it was examined by computer technicians working with Lambert and DePerno and not returned for 3 months. Leaf told Reuters earlier this year that his office was cooperating that spring with an outside investigator who was working with Lambert on an election fraud probe, but he denies his office was involved in taking the township tabulator. Oh, really? Huh. Okay. In August of 2022, the Attorney General's office recommended that criminal charges be considered against Lambert, DePerno, Leaf, and others that the office alleged were involved in the scheme. Nessel asked that a special prosecutor take over the case and handle charging decisions because DePerno had launched a campaign to unseat her as Attorney General. Okay, so now we remember where he heard his name before. DePerno, of course, lost in November. The special prosecutor's investigation continues. Lambert, Leaf, and DePerno have all denied wrongdoing. At the time the tabulators were breached, DePerno had been eager to get access to voting equipment from around the state to strengthen his case in Antrim, court records show. A court had allowed DePerno to examine Antrim County's Dominion voting equipment in response to his lawsuit. Also dangerous. In a court filing, DePerno said his team also needed to examine machines in other counties to prove that an algorithm was used statewide to manipulate the results. DePerno's Antrim suit was later dismissed in May of 2021, a decision affirmed on appeal. All right, we'll stop with the reading here today, but some intriguing stuff coming up here. The next section being a $500,000 gift. Well, I guess that'll change your fortunes if you're struggling financially, as Stephanie Lambert was, and still more. But this is an interesting addition to our rogues gallery. Somebody who's actually getting their hands on voting tabulators and convincing courts that they should turn these things over to her for quote-unquote forensic examination. Very dangerous person. Somebody you definitely want to keep your eye on. And now, somebody you want to keep your ear on. Coming up next, Justice Putnam with the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Next, right here on Netroots Radio.
From netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
One story here, no surprise. A White House aide has testified that Trump wanted blanket pardons for everyone involved in the January 6th insurrection. In other news, Republicans distorted crime data to win elections, but it didn't work. And the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration wants to know why Tesla has stopped reporting autopilot safety numbers online.